Today, my guest is Michael Brown. He is the creator of SpiritDaily.com. We've been talking about how he is a journalist that is not only an author of many books, but he also is providing, in my opinion, just a wonderful website for people to stop, thousands of Catholics, to get their links to news and commentary. And, he was a Pulitzer Prize nominated journalist for his work. And he has given his yes, because this show, Embracing Your Greatness, is about what are you doing to give your yes to God. And so his yes truly is helping many people, including myself, to look at the physical world and its events through a spiritual lens. And so he really, truly is offering such a great gift to the church. And so without further ado, I'm hoping, Michael, are you on the line with me?
Yes, Christina, and I'm sorry for any delays.
That's all right. It must be a good show if you've got problems getting in. You know what I'm saying? That's the way I see it. Somebody's not wanting that connection to be made, let's just put it that way. So I'm so grateful for your time, and actually I see that you're going to be coming to Green Bay on March 3rd. And of course, I live in Oshkosh, which is about an hour from Green Bay, and I go I go up to Green Bay regularly. I'm going to be on Drew's show again on Thursday, actually. So I'm happy to know that I'll actually get to meet you in March.
Well, we look forward to it. Please be our guest.
Okay, so let's get right down to it, because I have so much stuff that I'd really love to discuss with you to kind of bring some of our listeners up to speed that maybe haven't heard about what you're doing. Now, Spirit Daily is a website that that you decided to kind of put out on the blogosphere. Why did you decide to do that?
Well, it's a news site, and it was put out in 11 years ago. Actually, it was a coincidence because if you believe in those coincidences, the very first day, the year 2000, that it finally went live under our control, turned out to be, our very first headline turned out to be Released with the Third Secret of Fatima. And of course, as a website that focuses so much on apparitions of the Blessed Mother, and specifically the prophetic aspects, it was just incredible that the biggest headline to this day in our history was the first day we're in operation. It was, Christina, something I felt very called to do in prayer as another mission, if you will, to provide a panoply, a scan of the entire kind of religious and spiritual, mystical landscape in the United States and North America, around the world. Kind of like providing all these links to various stories that have Catholic relevance and have relevance to things that people who are interested in Christian mysticism would be interested in reading. So, as well as my own writings and commentaries and so forth. So, that was the genesis of the website, again, going back to the year 2000 as a Catholic news website.
Now, I've noticed, though, at least for me, that it seems to be providing people with an opportunity to begin seeing the world through a spiritual lens, which seems to me something that a lot of people have lost the ability to do very well. My opinion is because of the secularizing and Protestantizing of the Mass, and so no wonder people are having a hard time, with the mystical aspects, because we're kind of losing that mystery around us, and the only mystery that seems to be exuded is through Hollywood, and then people walk away saying, oh, well, if it's on TV, it can't be real. So do you think that we're in need of a spiritual lens in these times?
Absolutely. And I think you put it well. We're in a situation where scientism, because I think science has become a religion, so I call it scientism, has kind of taken over, where we're seeing things through a very narrow, as you put it, a narrow lens, and not seeing or more to the point, feeling a lot of other aspects of reality that swirl around us, including the supernatural, especially the supernatural. And this is a problem in our own church. Our church, our seminaries have kind of followed in the lockstep, in the footsteps of secular academia, which discounts anything that isn't, quote, scientific, unquote, discounts anything you can't see under a microscope or through a telescope, And of course, God is too big for a microscope. He's too big for a telescope, and he always leaves room for two things, for faith and or doubt. So it's not up to him to prove himself to us, but us to prove ourselves to him, and yet we have perceived things in the opposite way. We want him to prove himself to us as if we're so important. So this combination of scientism and turning our religion into a secular academic endeavor, and our arrogance in thinking that God has to prove himself to us is what has led to this kind of arid and vacant spiritual landscape.
Yes, when it's reminiscent of, I'm thinking of Ayn Rand's Objectivism, and just very interladen with that the only thing that you can truly know is real is what you can know in your mind, which again is that kind of tearing away dualistic idea of being separate, that there is no spiritual reality.
Well, that's exactly correct, and it's a very narrow way of viewing things from the physical, from the standpoint of physicality, and it just limits everything. It limits the way we prepare for the afterlife in a most crucial fashion. So it has been extremely damaging to view things in just that fashion. We've got to remember that while all of the brain is in the mind, not all of the mind is in the brain. There is a transcendental aspect of consciousness, and that's where we hope to try to provide a perspective from that type of horizon.
Yeah, that's so true. And what's interesting to me is that Satanists, or those that practice in occult, their quote-unquote religions, they do very much believe in the spiritual. They base everything off actually rituals that are very close to Catholicism, which is, of course, because it's so true that the enemy needs to use truth through ritual and form that he steals from Catholicism, which is the true communication that God speaks to and through his people with. I'm thinking of sacramentals, these outward physical signs that convey an inward grace, and Pope John Paul's theology of the body, saying that the body makes visible the invisible, and so therefore there are certain means and methods of which we manifest a spiritual reality in the physical world through ritual, tradition, form, the words, and the priesthood, that it seems like in Satanism they totally get, even though you've got a lot of people in the world that don't believe it.
Well, that's true. Rituals do work. The supernatural honors any type of devotion, any type of commitment, any type of sacrifice, any diligence and discipline, and that's what rituals include. That type of a discipline. And those who pray a lot and perform rituals, whether they're good rituals or bad rituals, do see results, because Satan, he apes, as you know, he mimics God, he mimics the Holy Spirit, and so he does it in this realm also. He, quote, answers, unquote, anti-prayers, if you want to call them that, because I wouldn't call satanic rituals any form of a prayer. So yes, it does work. It is honored, unfortunately, often in the wrong fashion.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine who's an exorcist priest say that the devil's a great legalist. He knows the rules and he uses them.
Well, that's right. He's the premier lawyer, and as they say, his number one tactic is to convince us that is to operate in dark, to convince us he doesn't exist, and we just referred to that when we were talking about scientism. And failing that, he goes to the opposite extreme. He's a man of extremes. He's a super intelligent spirit of extremes, and takes us, if he can't convince us he doesn't exist, then he takes us to another extreme of being obsessed or even devoted to him, to the occult and Satanism.
I want to talk about some things that you have featured on your site, one of which are supernatural orbs of light that have been manifesting or appearing in the southern half of the United States. What is that phenomenon all about? What's your take on that?
Well, orbs of light seem, when they're not caused by, digital artifacts of a camera or, refractions or reflections from dust particles on a lens, when they're actually something unusual, and there are times when they seem to exhibit an unusual characteristic, manifesting, for instance, an image of a face or a holy figure, and sometimes of a demonic figure in these orbs of light. They seem in the spiritual realm, whether it's Christian supernatural realm or the dangerous New Age psychic occult realms. They all report these orbs of light. Once again, forces of both light and dark use the same type of vehicles, just for different purposes. The Virgin Mary at La Salette in the 19th century in the French Alps, when she appeared there in a church-approved apparition, she arrived there in an orb of light, in a circular light. So these things, they can be used by holy entities, but unfortunately also we see a lot of reports of these orbs from haunted houses and other circumstances that are less than holy and that we really need to stay away from. I advise people to stay away from any phenomenon like this, period, because you can become too immersed in it, and you can become deceived.
Yes. Oh, I'm glad that you pointed that out for us, because that was going to be my next question, what we should do to discern these things or know the difference. But you're saying that it's probably best just to be aware of it, be prayerfully discernful, and not to get too involved in these kinds of things where we don't know what we're dealing with.
We get into trouble, I believe, Christina, when we seek things too obsessively. Like I said, Satan's a man of extremes. He either tries to keep us away from something or become obsessed. And we hear the hiss of the snake, they're obsessed. Just like we hear his hiss when we hear oppressed or depressed. And of course, ultimately, you mentioned an exorcist, ultimately possessed. And so he tries to make us obsessed with certain aspects of the supernatural. When things arrive, whether it's an orb or a locution or a vision or a dream that seems to have meaning, when there or a communication from the deceased, when it's spontaneous and not something that we have sought, then I think it's usually a little bit safer. It's when we try to force things to happen, to force ourselves to be mystics and to push ourselves with our own energy in that regard. That's when we start to head for trouble. St. Teresa of Avila said basically the same things, and she said that, if she got words, if she got a word of knowledge, locution, whatever you want to call it, and it caused her no expenditure of energy, that she could put stock in that as being godly and supernatural, whereas if she could feel herself kind of not straining, but exerting some energy at forming a message, she knew it was from her own subconscious. And of course, there are times that it comes from the dark side. So we just have to be careful we don't go overboard with mysticism. At the same time, we don't go to the other extreme of ignoring it.